Welcome. It is absolutely fantastic to see such a packed audience. My name is Owen Ryan. I work with Social Innovation Fund as Social Impact Manager, and I have the enviable task of trying to MC the next hour and a half. We're here, I suppose, for three reasons. One was to have lunch. Hopefully we'll all have that. Second is to learn. And part of learning, I suppose, we're going to try and inform you as best as we possibly can, because we have 4 funds open at the moment. There are some fantastic ideas out there. We want to give everyone in this room, everyone that you know, the best possible chance to apply for any one of these funds and ultimately be successful. So the third part of what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and inspire. So part of the inspiring piece is we are going to invite some of our audience. We're going to invite some of our past awardees to give us a kind of warts and all. Where were they at this time when they applied for the funds that they applied for? What did they learn? What can they share? How did they get on the various different programs that they participated on? And what questions have you got for them? So ultimately, we're just trying to empower you as best as we possibly can for all of the funds that are open. Hopefully you'll learn as much as possible. I'm going to kick off with a just very short overview of who we are, Social Innovation Fund Ireland. And as I said, the section after that, we're going to talk about the funds, and I'm going to ask each one of my colleagues up to speak about each individual fund. And lastly, we spoke about talking to the awardees. So, Social Innovation Fund. Who are we? We were set up to stimulate philanthropy. Back in 2013, we had 2 very big spend-down philanthropic funds that closed. And everyone was asking the question, where is philanthropy going to come from? So we were created by government, and we were created with what's called a match fund mechanism. So every euro that we raised in private philanthropic donations was matched 1-to-1 by the government. And that gives us an opportunity to apply our model to as many funds as possible. These funds can be issue-based or they can be issue-neutral, and ultimately go out and find the best projects that are out there all across Ireland. And ultimately what we're trying to do is scale those projects. So a bit about how we do it. We spoke about the match fund. So if we start in the bottom right-hand corner, and work our way around this wonderful diagram. We spoke about finding the best ideas. That's why we're here today. That's what we're doing as part of these 4 funds that are open at the moment. We want to find the best ideas all across Ireland, because what we're very good at is creating ideas in Ireland. What we're not very good at is actually scaling those ideas. So an idea that's really good down in Bantry, County Cork, isn't necessarily being used in Balmullet or Donegal. Why is that? We're a small country. We should be able to scale and replicate these ideas, or at least share the amazing things that we're doing down in the southwest with the northwest, and so on and so forth. So how we do that is we back the ultimate winners with a combination of cash, non-financial supports, and participation in a program. So I suppose it's fair for me to say, based on the 85 organizations that we've backed over the last 3 years, the cash is great, but the non-financials is what makes it work. So what are non-financial supports? They are, as I describe them, what you'd love to do, but you never have money to do it. And when you participate in the programs, that's the time to do it. That's when you have the headspace to say, we need a plan. We need a strategic plan to drive us forward. That's the time to do it. We've no communication strategy. That's the time to do it. And the non-financial budget supports you to do that. And ultimately, our mission then is to support the best ideas, the best innovations in Ireland, and with the model that we've just discussed. And ultimately, our goal is your goal, which is to scale those ideas and to maximize impact across Ireland. It's the ultimate goal. We don't expect you to do that in 3 or 6 months. That's what we work towards. So just a little bit about what we've achieved over the last few years. We've been operational now since the start of 2016. We've made a lot of mistakes. We're very much a feedback organisation. Today is part of that, and you're going to hear from the awardees what works, what doesn't work. But ultimately, we've raised over 29 million in philanthropic funds. We have delivered that across 22 funds, so we're hearing about 4 of those today. We backed 86 projects, innovations. What's really, really interesting is we have supported those organizations and enabled them to go and achieve follow-on funding. So that's the piece around the sustainability. So what do you do after you participate in the program? And ultimately, one of the metrics is they've created 183 jobs. So that's really good. We want to do more. And today we're going to hear about that more for these individual funds that we're going to speak about. I am going to not forget the hashtag, SIFI Lunch and Learn, if anyone has any great insights that they'd like to share across social media. And the first of these 4 funds that we're going to speak about today is going to be delivered to you by one of our SIFI stalwarts, Aisling Redmond, who's been here from the very, very beginning. When we were 2 people, we're now 18. Aisling was there at the very beginning. She's now leading a really exciting fund called Manana Heron Women of Ireland Fund. I'm going to invite Aisling to the stage to tell us a bit more about that.
Thanks, Ron. So thank you all for being here. This is the 3rd in the Lunch and Learn series that we've done, and we are delighted to end it with a full room and having participants on live stream. So what I want to do today is just tell you a little bit about the Manana Heron Fund, tell you about the criteria, how you can apply, and give you a little bit of tips on writing an application for Social Innovation Fund Ireland. Okay, so to start off, the Manana Heron Fund is a 1.8 million fund that is created by Social Innovation Fund Ireland in partnership with Bank of America and the Department of Rural and Community Development. This is the first fund of its kind to support charities and not-for-profit organisations around Ireland that are seeking to enhance the economic mobility of women. Over the last number of years in Ireland, we've seen some tremendous developments towards a more equal society. But in terms of creating equality of opportunity, we still have a long way to go. Despite holding the vast majority of 3rd-level degrees across Ireland, women are unfortunately disproportionately in roles that are far more junior to men and tend to occupy positions that are low paid or in minimum wage. This fund has transformative potential to make an impact on the social issue, and we aim to work with organisations that seek to progress the employment and education of women, and we hope to empower, over a 3-year partnership, 1,000 women to find and secure sustained employment across Ireland. So what are we offering with this fund? So there's a cash prize of between 50 to 100,000 per year for 3 years. So that's an 890,000 cash award. Each individual awardee will receive a bespoke business supports program. So this program is designed to increase their business acumen, to drive growth, and to deepen their impact. Each participant will also receive a place on Social Innovation Fund Ireland's Accelerator program. And this program will have input from experts in the not-for-profit sector, the public sector, and the private sector. They will address common issues faced by all organisations and will work to build a peer network of support. Performance management and impact management are 2 key offerings that we have. Impact management really allows organisations to understand the impact that they're having on the social issue and really help to trace it and show the work that they're doing. And we are delighted to offer with this fund access to mentoring and training from the Bank of America staff. So, who are we looking for? We are looking for organisations that are promoting the education and employability of women. Projects need to be working with women experiencing disadvantage. So disadvantage has a variety of faces, but what we mean by it is socio-economic, educational disadvantage, members of a minority group, women with disabilities, and disadvantage that can emerge through circumstance. Projects also need to be focused on developing the economic mobility of women in Ireland. Now this can look like increasing access to job opportunities, increasing the female labour force participation, assisting women to progress in their current roles and working on work-related skills. So this can be anything from CV or interview preparation, to soft skills including communication and confidence building. And one really important area that we feel we need to focus on with this fund is we want to support projects that have evidence of sustained impact. So this is you've done the project for a number of years, or you've started the project and can apply the learnings to it into a very impactful program that's going to help you transform your organization, but also the lives of your beneficiaries. If you think you should apply to the fund, there's 3 levels of criteria you need to be addressing. First and foremost, CIFI's core criteria is of utmost importance and will be applied to all funds that you're looking at here today. So you need to be addressing a critical social issue. In terms of Banana Heron, that's women's economic empowerment. You need to be an innovative solution. And by innovative, we mean you are providing a solution that may not already exist, or that you are providing an alternative solution, or you're providing an alternative access route for a target group. You have to have ambition to scale, as Owen has said. This doesn't have to be what you're working on at the moment, but we need to see that you are ambitious about growing this project and watching it succeed and scale around Ireland. You need to be based in Ireland and have your main impact in the Republic, and you have to be a not-for-profit legal form. So we've discussed some of the fund criteria for Manab, but 2 other areas I'd love to bring out here. We are looking for demonstrated strong leadership. So we need you to tell us how you've led this project to success. Tell us a little bit about your own background and why you think you can enable this project to grow. And we're also looking at strong financial and governance structures. And by this, we mean you need to be in a position where you can handle multi-year funding, and we need to feel that you're in a position that you can deal with that and also help us grow and scale. The advantageous criteria, one thing I would say that's really important is you need to have developed a network and a pipeline of participants. So you have the opportunity in your application to demonstrate all of this, so please do utilize it as much as possible. So in terms of some things we've come across over the years, is our project innovative? As I've said, if you have a solution that currently doesn't exist, if you're providing it to a different target group or you're providing it in a new way, you are innovative in an Irish context. And you have an opportunity in the application to tell us what is currently out there, so please do utilize that. How important is scaling? Again, we need you to be ambitious about this. We want to invest in projects that can have transformative impact, but you don't need to be scaling at this moment. If there's something you're interested in, we will work with you on the project to do that. Are there limitations on what the funding can be used for? So obviously, we don't fund capital-wise, and the direct use of the funding is for the project that you apply for with Social Innovation Fund Ireland. And just a question around evidence. I suppose whatever evidence you have, please do supply it to us. You have an option to upload additional information. Do use that, but do use concise answers throughout the application. There is a very tight word limit, and we've done that deliberately. So please do use concise language. One thing I would say is a lot of organizations take information from their website or from strategic plans that they've already developed. It is very obvious when that's copied and pasted, and you're not answering the question then, so just please use them as a resource, but don't put them in the application. And the last thing is the deadline for applications is the 18th of April at 5 p.m. I would encourage you to have a look at the website. Do read through the criteria in more detail, and do look at our frequently asked questions section on each web page. There's an opportunity there to look at the terminology we use throughout our applications and throughout our funds. Please do review them before writing your application. And if you do have any questions that you'd like to direct at me, that's my email there. So thank you.
Okay, before we go into the Ignite Fund, let's do a show of hands. Who's here and thinking about applying for Banana Heron? Brilliant. Who's here and they're thinking about applying for the Ignite Fund? Great. And then, last but not least, our 2 youth funds. Okay, fantastic. And last show of hands, who would like the word count extended for questions? You can't choose, unfortunately. So the challenge is you got to get it in a shorter period of time. One sentence, 3 sentences, whatever. The words go quickly, but use them as best you possibly can. So next up, we've got the Ignite Fund. It gives me great pleasure to introduce one of the newest members of our team who's hit the ground running. She manages the Sports Fund, she manages the Arts Fund. Now that she's managing the Ignite Fund, which is a combination of 4 different awards, so it gives me great pleasure to invite Amy Power to the stage to tell us more about this.
So I'm a glamorous assistant, so thank you, Anna. So I'm on my 2 there, is that right? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stand here so that Facebook Land can see me, so hello to everybody on the live stream. So we did a quick show of hands there as to who is planning to apply to Ignite, but can I have a show of hands as to who's ever heard of Ignite? Is that different? Okay, so there's more of you that have heard of it. Thank you, team. There's more of you that have heard of it. So using one of the eyes that Owen mentioned there, I hope to inspire you to apply to the fund, and also to give you some confidence in terms of submitting your application, and for you then to be able to put your best foot forward on that. Okay, so we might okay, well firstly, so Ignite. So it is a €550,000 fund. It's developed by ourselves in partnership with a number of private philanthropists and the Department of Rural and Community Development via the Dormant Accounts Fund. Okay, so you can see here what the fund offers. Okay, so this is cash grants between €40,000 and €60,000, as well as a business supports package, and that's worth up to €15,000, a place on our accelerator program, as well as support on impact management. So this was already mentioned by my colleagues, and really it's not just about the money, yeah? So this is an opportunity for you to take stock and to grow as an organisation, both in terms of scale, but also in terms of your depth and your development. So first up in the categories is empowering families. So there's 2 awards here, and they are worth €75,000 each. Here we're looking for projects or organisations working with families experiencing disadvantage, providing training and support to either their parents or their guardians to develop parental capacity, but ultimately to improve the development outcomes of children aged between 6 and 12. Okay, so if that's you, amazing. Okay, we want to hear from you. However, there are a number of criteria that we'll be looking for when assessing your applications. So again, in order to put your best foot forward, please include these in your application concisely and clearly. So the first is whether you have an early intervention approach or not. Okay, so that's what we're looking for, so please include that in your application. The other is that ideally you're considering the voices of the participants, both in terms of your design and your delivery. That you work holistically with these participants as part of the solution. And if you work with other services, whether they're statutory or they're voluntary agencies, please include that as well, because we like to see that. And a key one here is your proven track record of impact. Sometimes we don't see that enough. Okay, so take yourself out of your day-to-day and really reflect on what is it that we do. Okay, what are our outcomes? What is our impact? Okay. Next is Music to Impact. So there's 2 awards here as well, and they are worth €55,000 each. And this award is open to projects or organisations that use music to enhance well-being and social inclusion of participants. And we're looking to also here be able to see a substantial impact on those participants. And ideally, the project or the organisation is working with beneficiaries experiencing some sort of disadvantage. So we're not looking for a one-off intervention here. We're looking for an established continuous programme. And we're not looking for projects that are just improving musical ability or performance. Okay, so really the focus here is on enhancing well-being and promoting social inclusion through the medium of music, if you like. All right. So, harnessing ability. So this is supported by the W2 Foundation, as well as Ralph and Maureen Parks. There's an award package here of €75,000. There's just one award for this category. So the aim of this award is to create economic opportunity, enhance skills, drive leadership, and provide job opportunities for people with disabilities. The one core thing here is that you have to have measurable outputs and outcomes for participants. Ideally, you provide work experience, placement, or career progression, and projects based in Munster do have an advantage, and I'm aware that we're in Dublin, but if you are thinking or seeking to expand into Munster, there's also an advantage there. I'm moving now. Who doesn't want to move? Oh, yeah. So last but not least is youth resilience. So this award is also supported by the W2 Foundation, as well as Ralph and Maureen Parks. And this is one award as well, and this is worth €75,000. This is focusing on promoting the positive mental health of young people in the context of an increasing social and digital media use. Okay? So we're looking to provide safe and positive use of the internet, and this can be in a number of areas, including prevention of cyberbullying. It could be the prevention of online grooming, and just general education on internet safety. Okay, this can also be either prevention or intervention methods. It's not specific on either. And again, so if you're based in Munster, there is an advantage, but if you are seeking to expand into Munster or indeed nationally, there is an advantage there. Right. So I think if you just take it once more. Yeah. Cool. So the deadline for applications is fast approaching, but it's all doable. Okay, 6th of May. There is more information on our website, on the Ignite Fund as part of our website, and that is my email address is there. Okay, so we're going to have a panel discussion in a while, but I'm also just going to stay back. So if anyone wants to talk to me about their particular projects, if you what category should you apply to, have a chat with me, and I have loads of my business cards, so I'll give all my cards, you have all my number, and you can hound me then as well. All right? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Amy. So Amy mentioned, obviously, I just realised we've got the 3 A's. We've got Amy, we've got Aisling, and the soon to be introduced Anne. If you do have any other questions, we appreciate there's a lot of information here. Please email, grab them after this session. We obviously appreciate that there's a lot there, but ultimately we want to support you as best as we possibly can to put the best application in, if that is what you are doing. So please, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Whatever you need to know that you feel better supports you, please ask the questions. I might challenge you as well to give me 2 questions that you'd like us to discuss in the panel as well, so that's coming up. So I'm going to do another little challenge. This is another show of hands. This is just around, if you've got existing organisations, what's the key challenge that you have at the moment? I'm going to give you a list of 3. I mightn't get them right, but here's what we typically tend to find. So who finds as part of their organisation that governance is kind of an issue and a bit of a challenge for organisations? 1, 2, 3, fantastic. 4. What about organisation? So you're the people that are part of your organisation and that capacity building. So creating kind of streamlined organisation so everyone's doing what they should be doing and you're not doing absolutely everything. Yeah, okay, a few more for that. And drum roll, last one, who thinks that funding is one of the key challenges that you have as an organisation? Hands going up straight. There we go, fantastic. Well, we've got the answer. That worked out quite well. So who's the third A? We affectionately know her as the mother of the cell funds. So the cell funds are the last 2 funds we're going to hear about. It's a bit different in terms of how it is structured, how you go out and do the fundraising yourself. And Anne Darmody, our Business Development Director, is going to tell us how. Anne.
Note to self, approve the script before you deliver it. Obviously that wasn't the approved script. Look, I'm here to talk about two funds, the Children and Youth Funds and the Education and Mental Health. So I noticed every hand went up in the room about difficulties with fundraising. But what if I was to tell you about, to follow on from the amazing Banana Herring Fund, which is a €1.8 million fund for a small number of lucky organisations empowering women. And the Ignite Fund is a €550,000 fund with 4 amazing awards happening over just 1 year. But what if I was to tell you, the funds I'm about to talk about, there is no upper limit. You can ask for an award of any size. How many people in the room would be interested in that? No upper limit to it. You can ask for any award that you want. And ideally, I would like you to come and ask us for 5 years funding, because it's very difficult to do anything in 1 year. It's impossible. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to do anything in 2 years. If you're working in this space, you need to be working for at least 5 years to show results. And that's what we're about. We're all about impact. So I have no money, unfortunately, at the start of this fund. And that's where I need to mobilise the people in the room. I had the pleasure of talking to a number of you outside. Thank you very much. There's Amy from Limerick. Amy's come all the way from Limerick. Fantastic. In those 2 minutes, you told me incredible stories about what you do, why you do it. 14 years as working in the youth sector. I asked her, did she start at 3? No, she told me she didn't. Amazing stories, and that is the power of turning philanthropy, turning on the switch for philanthropy, and that's what I'm here to talk to you today about. So, you will have the projects, or you know people who are in these projects. You don't have the money, but you have the story. So in the few minutes I've heard them, and I'm sure if I spent time talking to everybody in the room, I would hear those stories. This is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. If only we had an extra few bob, if only we had some extra money. So I'm here to give you the golden ticket. I'm here to offer you the potential for match funding for your project. The difference between this fund here and Ignite and this fund here is that I don't have a corporate donor or donors who'd be kind enough to come to the table, but I'm willing to help you go find them. So, do you have anybody who has given you a donation in the past? A local corporation, a local business? It was the flavour of the moment at the time, or let's support this project, and now they're gone off. That flavour has moved on to the new vanilla ice cream or whatever. I want you to mobilise yourselves. If you have projects that fit in the space, and I want to talk about what the issues are, if you have projects that fit into this space, you can go and say, leverage your application to the Social Innovation Fund Ireland for your application, and I'll quickly run through the methodology. They don't need to give you money, they need to give you a pledge. So I and Dermody support a project to the level of X amount of money for X number of years, and you then can go through the application process with us. If you are successful, you can go back to those donors and say, hey ho, one of the best enabling organisations, Social Innovation Fund Ireland, believes in us, believes in our project, and is willing to match your donation, Mr. or Mrs. Philanthropist. So that's my golden bit. Let's talk about what the funds are about. So you can click on there and we'll talk through it. So the Children and Youth Education Fund, looking to work with young people who have been affected by disadvantage or disability. And I think Ashley spoke beautifully about what disadvantage is in the broader sense, and disability. You need to be moving those young people along the QQI ladder in the broadest sense, so it might be skills that equate to the QQI level 1 to 8. And it's all about retaining learners in education, at least up until the age of 25. So you might be operating at any level of those, or any stage in that process. Okay, the usual SIFI criteria, and again, the rules and regulations. Ashley told you about the social issue. Is it innovative? What context is it innovative? The fund criteria are learners, youth learners up to 25 years of age, and you must demonstrate some progression along the QQI ladder. And the minimum, there is no maximum ask, but the minimum ask is you must ask for at least 20,000 a year for 2 years. So the minimum, you must find donor or donors willing to sign a letter to say that they will give you 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, could be any number of donors, grouped together, 20,000 a year for 2 years. Good news, no upper limit. So you can say to a donor, support us this year and pledge us for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, and you can go back and show them the progress that you're doing with SIFI and with your project. And then the advantageous criteria, again, for all of our funds. Some of you, all of you are doing great things. If you can prove that, if you show us how you're evaluating it, we'd love it to be 5 years. 3 at a push, minimum 2. So we'd really like those asks to be for 5 years. Now imagine that line on sight of funding for the next 5 years for your project. Numeracy and literacy, STEAM approach, holistic approach, so all the wraparound supports that you guys are so good for doing for your projects, and that the outcomes are attainable and that you're measuring it. Okay. The youth mental health is similar pattern. Projects offer meaningful and lasting support in the area of youth mental health. Young people up to the age of 25, and really focusing in on those projects that are providing preventative supports or interventions. The same SIFI criteria apply, all the basics here. Fund criteria, children, it can be from primary school up to the age of 25. Again, we'd like to see evidence, not we're doing this, we think it's doing great, what is the evidence? So shout out about the evidence behind your project. Again, if you're doing some research or you have an evaluation piece in it, that's fantastic. Minimum ask 20k for 2 years, no maximum ask. Again, these advantages, they're not essential, but it's good if you have them, but don't say, oh, I don't identify with any of those, so I can't apply. These are the must-haves, these are the nice-to-haves, okay? Awareness, prevention, and skills training. A practice rather than preach, that's really pretty much about an overall approach. Mental health training for educators is also something that we'd be interested in. And obviously those working with the highest risk projects are an interest on a holistic approach. The big difference between this fund with no money, but a bottomless pit of money if you can come with the right ask, and a non-inherent fund, and the impact is that it's not a competitive process. You saw all the hands in front of you in the room that went up from an non-inherent. It's of huge interest. It's a great fund. You saw all the hands that went up for the Ignite fund. It's a finite amount of money. It is competitive. There is only X number of awards to be given out for each thing. There is no limit to the amount of applications or the applicants that can be successful in this. If you hit the criteria and you've hit the minimum level of monies, 20k a year for 2 years, 40k, you're in. So if there's 10 of you, if there's 15 of you, if there's 20 projects, and you meet those criteria, you're in. It's not that there's another project that's better than you from down the road that pipped you at the post and you've gone through the whole thing, right? So this is why the first education fund that we did, and I know there's some people here from TA21 who were part of that education fund, the collective ask of those projects was 3.6 million. The second time we ran this model was youth education and youth mental health. The collective ask of those projects was 5 million, creating a 10 million euro fund. And we've recently, and I will just give you a little hint at the figure, but the two funds, sport to impact and art to impact, look like they're going to break those records, and we're going to be up close to 5-6 million. So when matched by government, they become 12 million euro funds. Okay, so you all want to go with these funds. This is where the money is. This is where progress will be made. This is going to sustain your projects and make them world names, not just known in Ireland. Thank you. The most important thing, the closing date. All right, so how does it work? It's slightly different in that it's not an award. You go find your donors, 1, 5, 10, 15, 20 donors. You send your pledge letter in with your application. If you're successful, we will give you at least a 50% uplift in cash on whatever those donors brought to the table. So say they bring 100,000, you will get 150,000 on top of your 100,000. You will walk away with 150,000 euros in your back pocket to spend on the project that you applied for. Not only that, you also get plugged into the SIFI system. If you've pledged money for 5 years, you will stay with us for 5 years. This amazing team of people who work on impact will work with you and help your project to sustain and scale. And that's invaluable. You'll be part of workshops, bespoke supports. We may have an evaluation piece there. All of the tools that you need to go back out. So it's not a one-stop shop. This will help you go back out to your donors, go back out to other philanthropists and say, look at what we're doing with SIFI, look at the great progress. And sustain yourselves for time to come. So just one final slide, which is the closing date, which is short because I know you've got to raise the money up front, which is difficult. The 17th of May is the closing date. It may be the shutters coming down on this fund, but it's not the shutters coming down on your conversation with SIFI. So if you have an idea that fits in this, come talk to us. Tell us, okay? Talk to us about if this fund was to open again, if there was another iteration of this fund. We don't have to wait for a corporate donor to come along for this. This is enabling people like you to go and do the wonderful work that you're doing. So that's me done. Thank you.
I didn't realise it was a competition with the pitching. Anne is raising the bar. But it gives me a perfect segue to speak a bit about, like Anne actually framed it up very well towards the end in terms of, becoming part of the SIFI network, participating in the program. We hope provides you with tools that make your project that bit more sustainable, that helps you to tell your story better. That's one of the key things that we focus on, impact measurement and actually being able to communicate that. That's not always very easy to do. So we place a huge emphasis on that. So I thought I'd share a little project that I had the pleasure of meeting last Friday. Really interesting project. They make ice cream and bars and so forth. But the only reason I remember them is because they have a lovely pitch at the very start. And what they do is they ask everyone to put their hands up in the air. So I'm going to ask you to do the same. Everyone put their hands up in the air and say, "Way-hey." Way-hey! Way-hey makes every person. But no, it stuck with me because I thought I had listened to 24 projects speak about their project, and he was the only guy that actually stood up and did something different. So storytelling, pitching, telling your story, there's all those interesting nuances that you need to pull out to make yourself stand out from the crowd. And that part is very much central to what we do at Social Innovation Fund. Right, so we've heard from the 3 A's across the 4 funds. I had promised you that as we go into the next section, we're going to hear from 3 amazing awardees across 2 projects. But I'm offering the audience now an opportunity to say, what are the 2 things that you'd like to ask in advance so we can thread it into the conversation? We are going to afford opportunity for questions at the end, but so everyone doesn't always answer. So who has a burning question? Anyone? Questions? We can ask the questions at the end as well. Okay, no questions, that's fine. So the Way-hey part is a fantastic intro for, as I mentioned, 3 awardees across 2 projects. I'm going to ask them to come to the stage. First of all, I'm going to ask Joy and Carl from KIC. KIC is Kickboxing to Inspire and Challenge Kids. So a warm round of applause for Joy and Carl. Yeah, you can take a seat. Yeah. Brilliant. And last but not certainly least, we have a multiple SIFI award winner and a recent recipient of funding from the Google Impact Challenge last week. We've got Nolene Blackwell from Dublin Rig Crisis Centre. Nolene, please come in. So we've got fantastic examples. It's all covered. I'm going to tee up. I'm okay standing. I'm not in the way of anything. I just want to make sure that we place the spotlight on these 2 amazing projects. So what they do have in common is they participated in the Animate Awards Fund. So that was the Healthy Community Awards. It was projects that were addressing mental health or any health issues as part of their participants. That ran in 2018, so they would have interviewed in September 2017. So if we think about that period, September 2017, a couple of months before it, we're going to try and make it relevant for everyone that's in the room, so there's that synergy. They participated in a 6-month program. So they did impact measurement, they did strategic planning, they did communications. But what I'm going to ask them to first do, and I don't know if Joy or Karen is going to tell us a bit about the project. What is KIC?
Okay, so KIC is Kickboxing to Inspire and Challenge Kids.
So our project is a 12-week program, and what we do is we combine kickboxing techniques with pro-social and youth work. So kickboxing is the hook that attracts young people, and we target young people in Tallaght, and we've since gone on to expand that in Clondalkin. So it's the kickboxing that attracts the young people, and we will be kind of sneaky in that. But once we have them then, we kind of sneak in a lot of pro-social learning. So what a typical session would look like is a young person would come in. People usually ask us, what do we do if there's any messing? There is no time for messing. They're absolutely knackered by the end of an hour session. But you could be, for one of our weeks, which we would focus on self-esteem, you could be doing a This Is Me fitness circuit. So at each station you would be working out, but when the whistle blows, there is a flip chart on the wall, and you have to answer a question about yourself, which could be, you know, what would your best friend say about you? So there's no time for thinking. I mean, our project is very much around, we want young people to come in and start engaging in physical activity, release endorphins, and suddenly their brains are open for learning, and that's kind of what we do. So that is, it's a partnership. Myself and Carol applied for it together, and what's innovative about KIC is we bring together a kickboxing coach and a youth worker. So you can't go down to your local kickboxing club and get something similar, or likewise in the youth service. So what we did, we brought it together, and you know, everything we do has a kickboxing feel, and that's what it is attractive to young people, because if you work with young people, it's bloody hard to impress them these days. So you know, we just kind of have to keep on our toes and that. So that would be KIC. I don't know.
No, that's great,
Yeah.
Joy, that's brilliant. I'm going to actually ask Noeline to just give us a quick, I suppose, summary of, as part of Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, it was Body Right, that was the project. I suppose there's the complexity there that maybe everyone experiences, the audiences as well. It's not just organisations always, it's actually projects within organisations that we're backing as part of the programme. So you might give everyone kind of an overview of both, I suppose.
So I think in Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, what people tend to know most about us is something like the helpline, where people can contact the service 24 hours a day, run by volunteers and staff, and it's a big thing. And then people think of it in terms of healing and the therapy as well. But from really the earliest days, and it's 40 years old this year, same as myself. Why are you laughing? But from its earliest days, really, there was a recognition that it was all very well to go and do the healing work, but you could see almost immediately that some of the harm that we were now trying to heal did not have to happen in the first place at all, which is why education and training has always been a big part of the work of the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. And for 10 years, the 10 years up to about 2007 or 06 or 07, the Rape Crisis Centre had this programme called Body Right, which worked with teachers, youth workers, facilitators, guidance counsellors, anyone working with young people, to not teach them about sex, to not teach them about consent, but to teach them about respect and healthy relationships. And it was developed over time in a sort of a holistic way where people could go into schools, so then the people who did the programme could go into schools, could work with the young people in the schools, and some of those young people have done amazing things themselves, having used the programme. So we were 10 years in, 2016, 2017. I get easily frustrated, so it's probably, it's no great sort of, unique experience to see me frustrated, but I was really frustrated that we had that it wasn't recognised, that we weren't everywhere. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it should be in every school now. So Leonie O'Dowd, who runs the programme, says, well, that's all very well and good, but we can only reach this number of people. And we sat down and thought about it, and we said, what if we had this truly properly evaluated? Are we really any good? Is it just ourselves that think we're any good? So it wasn't really to set up the programme, because it was there 10 years by the time we applied for the funding, but it was to get an assessment, an evaluation of Body Right. and then work out how to make that build either that we drop it, which actually SIFI was open for as well, really, you know, that we could go in and say it's actually a crap program, or it's kind of been overtaken by time, or to improve, but mainly to be able to say, look, we think we have something really extraordinary here, and we should be able to scale it up. So that's actually, the money went mainly towards the cost of a good evaluator to look at the program and identify what we were and weren't doing right. And on top of that, the non-financial support as well was just amazing for us. It was all the work around the communications. And some of that actually hasn't been fully done yet. because we've actually moved on the basis, I mean, the results out of that. So we have, for instance, we have branding opportunities and we have various things, all of which we are only now going to do because we have actually used it to get on to the next stage, which I can either talk about now or we'll just go on and say what kind of you've done with it. So anyway, and there, you know, sometimes things go your way as well. And while the Belfast Celebrity Rape Trial didn't look like much of an opportunity in itself this time last year, it did lead to a commitment from the then Minister for Education to review how consent was taught in schools. And it was really, really, really important for us that we are able to hook into this review of how consent is taught in schools, because we know how to do it differently, we know how to do it better. And so we have actually we've used some of the information already in our submission into that, and we're going to be doing lobbying around it, but principally we were able to use it as well to persuade another funder to give us a posting focusing in on youth programs for the next 3 years, which will be starting up really soon. Not moving into anybody else's space in the area, just we have some expertise, and this is going to be a hard sell in some ways because we've learned an awful lot about the barriers to implementing this as well through the program. So, but that's where we're going. So that's why we haven't fully utilised every single penny of your money so far. But it's all there just for this project. We know what we're doing next.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So it's extra. Like we now actually understand we have something that's quite significant in terms of an approach. We're not the only people who do it this way, but we're the only people with the evidence base, as well as the idea, as well as the expertise. Right. Yeah.
And knowing, I suppose, just to go back a step in terms of context for everyone, the Animate Awards, of which Dublin Rape Crisis Centre and KIC were recipients of, was €25,000 in total. So it was 15,000 cash and 10,000 on non-financial supports. Just to give you a kind of a sense of the time frame, but also the quantum of money that we're talking about. To speak to that, Carol, I'm turning the mic to yourself.
Is this thing on?
Carl actually had promised us a poem, but I don't know what's it's written there. Carl, you were speaking before about thinking back to the start of 2018, because obviously we went through the interview process in September 17. We'll speak a bit about that in a short while. But if you think about where KIC was at the start of 2018, can you just provide, I suppose, a bit of context for the audience in terms of how many people you were supporting, where you were based, and I suppose, what was the extent of where you thought you could go?
Well, you're really asking a lot there. I wrote a few things down because the Accelerator course was a phenomenal experience, a really challenging one, an exhausting one, but ultimately a very exciting and rewarding one. So I didn't want to leave anyone out. So that's what I wrote down here. Going home. Where we were before we pitched to you guys was we had a great pilot. We piloted the program in Tallaght. The kids that participated absolutely loved it. We were delighted with ourselves, and then the kids at the end of it said, "So what do we do now?" So we hadn't really planned that far ahead. Then we did start planning about what we could do, and we realised that we had an organisation behind us, so we had a certain amount of support. But in order to take it to the next level, I suppose myself and Joy, I was lucky in that I had a colleague and a friend that was equally as passionate about what I was doing as I was. We really sat down and we discussed where could we go with it. what is the ceiling on this team? And then ultimately the end of that conversation is where do we get money from? And then I suppose then we found out with the Animate Fund, we said we'd give it a go. We applied for it. We were very lucky in that we were successful, and the guys could not have been more helpful. They really couldn't. It was like really, the course of a career, I suppose that's one of the highlights. And looking back, stressful as it was, it's still like one of my favourite times throughout this whole process. Non-financial supports, these are things that you didn't need. These are the things that I wrote down, which I did actually need them. So we got communications training with people from an organisation called We the People. I was with Niall and Sinead. They were fantastic. Nobody that met us seemed to tell us that we had a bad idea. That was also great meeting them up, and everyone, the experts in their field, are telling you that you have a great idea. So that was pretty cool. We had a communication strategy that we came up with Niall and Sinead, also media training, and we got into the Irish Times. Recently we were on RTE. It's like you just don't see for yourself when it's just two people working with 6 kids in a room. Like it just doesn't seem possible. But all this kind of helped towards get there. They helped us organise the launch of our Kick Academy. So Kick works because it targets teenagers in the most disadvantaged areas. We go to them. They don't come to us, but it started to get that successful that we kind of needed a HQ. Everyone was like, well, where can we find out more about where we can meet up, or where can we meet you? We're at the coffee dock. But this thing seemed to get bigger than us, and Animate and the guys here helped us launch our Kick Academy in Tallaght, which is great. We'll get more into that. It also helped us do business planning, strategic solutions with Conor and Sinead. Like these, I mean, they never bragged or boasted or anything, but you could just tell they were worth a lot of money, the two of them. And they never let us put our hand in our pocket at lunch. Me and Joanne, they thought we were good too, but like we were looking for change for parking. Conor and Sinead were great. They sat us down and kind of got us to think outside ourselves. It wasn't just like where can we be next month or next year. Sat us down and really made us concentrate, and they took away all the red tape of, all right, I get guys why you don't want to do this or why you don't want to get out, but if you could close your eyes and imagine that everything was 100% going to go your way, what would it look like? And we did that, and they helped us come up with a 5-year strategy of how we would do that, and what seemed like a daunting task or just possible, they took all the complications out of it and just made it steps. So that was phenomenal. I couldn't have hoped to come up with that myself, and I think Joy would agree. Well, Joy probably could. But we had a great mentor in Jonathan. He formerly worked for Fogarty. He was great, just all around. When things got on top of you, you felt like this was too much, or you felt stupid for asking a question. Jonathan was always there at the end of the phone, or to meet up with a cup of coffee and to tell you that you were headed in the right direction, or here's a different approach you're going with that. We had a designer who made us a pitch pack, so we don't verbally have to really go out anymore and ask people for money. We have a pack that's designed, and we can just email it off to you, and you can get your money to us as easy as you like. Just pitch training. To get your kids, I suppose, or teenagers even, it is like Joy said, it's increasingly difficult. You're competing with instant simulation and instant kudos for everything they do. So getting them up to kick a football or come out and meet us at a certain day every day is it was getting harder and harder. But I felt because of the pitch training that helped us make videos and slick professional kind of music videos and stuff like that, we were then able to hone that type of skill, which we put up like things on Facebook, small little highlight bids and stuff like that, and that helped them then share that on Facebook to get their friends involved and make their parents proud and their schools proud. And it's just, I just can't oversell how good the accelerator course was. Really good. But if you feel like this is daunting or this is too much, don't worry, you're not alone. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. And
Brian, could you give us a sense of the scale that you've actually achieved? Because I know we were chatting before, I was trying to refresh myself on the numbers. It was a class of 15 in Tallaght. You've really progressed. We really have. It would be. I suppose we'll start with the KICK program itself. It takes 15 per class. We usually have 2 classes in Tallaght.
We then piloted then in Clondalkin then last year. That did really well, ran 2 classes over there. So then it went to 4 classes running in cycles. Then it went to another partnership, found out about the idea, and they contacted us and they wanted to run it. So they piloted it, they loved it, they want to run it again. Then other partnerships and other kickboxing clubs started finding out about it. They want to run it. So now we're in a position where we're, you know, training people to do what we came up with, which is so surreal almost, you know. And sometimes I can, I would be very intimidated in a lot of situations. This, for one, being very intimidating, but that was another thing that some of the mentors did. They just said, guys, don't realise that you're the first people to do what you've done. So you're experts in your field by default, but I'll take it. So not more than enough. Where it's come from, those 15 original kids, all of those kids are still with us. They're all new coaches now. They're all 6 foot tall. I don't know what they're even huge. We run another program for kids even younger than that. It's called Mini Kicks. It's like a splinter of the family. So before the kids have to be 12 before they technically qualified to reach us. But now we've got one of our students running kids class, which is called Mini Kicks, in our HQ. We've also got this one-to-one service. I can't really talk too much about, but it targets the most at-risk, vulnerable, disadvantaged, tragic stories you've ever heard, and I'm able to meet up with them one-to-one for physical therapy, if you like. Most of them come through, well, they only come through referrals, and the kind of impact that that's having, I can't even sell it to you. I couldn't articulate what the reward is for that. It's absolutely amazing. And I suppose, so that's Kick 101, Mini Kicks, all our kick cycles, all our partnerships wanting to run them, and then, as if we didn't need any more work, the parents of these kids are asking us would we run an adults kick.
I think professionals are interested, you know.
So, besides that, that's kind of where we are. I've got a full-time job now out of this, so I'm very fortunate that my colleague and myself have a job out of something that we created, and it's still as much fun now as it was on the first day that we started. So, fantastic.
I'm conscious you've been sitting very patiently for almost an hour now, but I just wanted to ask Nolan one question before we kind of go out to the floor. Nolan, you spoke very, I suppose, succinctly about how it actually had changed from where you were at the start of the program to where you are now. Looking back on that 6-month period, what would you do again? What would you change, maybe? Because it sounds like it was a very exploratory kind of time for not just the organisation project.
Well, you see, again, you're looking at, so the first challenge on the interview for that was trying to explain to somebody how any project that was 10 years old was very innovative. So yeah, kind of that. But in the set, we weren't insincere either, but we were trying to say that it had kind of growed like Topsy, and there was no thought given to what actually we had there. And either we were going to do Body Right, or we weren't. And anyway, sure, we sold it. They gave us the money, they gave us the that's the important thing. And I suppose, I forget the question, because I needed to get that piece out before I asked in the questions, how are you daring to do that? But there was just something about, I suppose, trying to look at something that was in existence, and that everyone took for granted, and that everyone, in all our organisations, we're all clear on how hard we work, and how long we work, and how underappreciated we are. So everyone was clear on all of that. But to what purpose? And so I suppose more than just, and even thinking what Carl was saying there, what the non-cash grant gave us was a sense of purpose. Because ours is good enough to go into all the schools in Ireland right now, all the secondary schools, and be adapted. Like out of that we were able to adapt it for kids with autism. Troker have taken it off to Sierra Leone or something like that. So, we kind of have ideas for it as well about just what it is we actually have. And that was So it was kind of gathering people together who saw it as good work and tried to make it clear that it was too precious to just let drift on the way it was drifting. It was more important to make sure that if this had value, that we maximised it. So, and we found the questions really hard and challenging. Like, I'd say they were far nicer to eat. They're all very good. Like, nobody was everyone was very lovely. But they were all the questions were hard questions. And also it went quite deep in our organisation. You know, so it wasn't even primarily me, let alone me. It was the people who were working on the programme, the people who were the facilitators who normally just come in, did their day's work and went out again. So it was quite empowering in that way. And now they're pushing me, saying, when are we getting this? What are we doing with that? And so we're taking it as a very serious, precious thing that I think we kind of knew, but we hadn't articulated before. So that's really valuable. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that. I'm guessing that people have questions for Carol, Joy, and Nolene. Who wants to ask the first question? Yeah. Oh, thanks, Sarah.
Fantastic stories, thank you for sharing. And can I ask, how long were you doing this before you got the funding? It's quite remarkable what you're doing.
So we piloted our first one in 2016, May 2016, and we applied for Animate in 2017. So, but we knew that to go for something like this, it was really important so that we can demonstrate the impact. So we knew that starting off, so we would have concentrated on trying to collect that data. So we would have done pre and kind of post questionnaires. We do something quite simple about, how, they're showing up. Surely that's enough to say that they improve their physical health. That's not enough. So we said, right, okay, how can we do that? So we said, right, we want to keep it simple because we don't want the program to be, if you ask teenagers to sit down and fill out 5 pages, it's not happening. So we came up with kind of something simple that we would measure the number of kicks they could do in 30 seconds on week 1. And they go in, and if you've ever tried it, your leg will fall off. Yeah. It seems so easy, and they don't know the proper technique or anything like that. So very simple. We write down the number, and then after the 12 weeks, they're obviously fitter, and they have the better technique. We measure it again, and there's our measurement. So it was we had stuff to go on, but apart from all that, for us, we think that young people evaluate with their feet. And we had 100% retention rate at the end of our pilot program. And I think that's when we said, we're on something here. So that's when we went to play. So it wasn't, we haven't been doing it for years and years, but we knew we had something good. And that's, yeah.
You did say there was an undertone. The kick was just to attract them. So how were you able to measure the main thing that you were actually trying to impact?
So, it's just like the undertone. Sorry,
No, you did say you attracted them.
Oh, the
proposals because of, you attracted them to a program.
Yeah.
But you had something else in mind.
Yes.
What exactly were you looking to impact?
So for the 12-week program, we would have half of 12 weeks of all the pro-social things we want to do, and then 12 weeks of how you would progress physically, and that's where Carol would have brought all the content for the kickboxing side, and then I would have brought all of the content for the youth work side. So we would have drawn from resources such as there used to be a Copping On program, which was a crime awareness tool that would have been worked in, say, a classroom base. But what we did, we went through the manual and said, right, we could take this part and we'll put it in with this, and we'll give it a kickboxing feel. So, at the start, we have a group of kids who will they might grunt at you, and then throughout you get how are you. But then as we go along, we were starting to tackle things like right and wrong. We were having discussions. Young people are talking about issues that are affecting them in their area. They're challenging each other. It's part of, we were called kickboxing to inspire and challenge kids, and it's kind of exactly what we do. So, I'm not sure why I answered that for you.
Yes.
And Joe, you're kind of touching on an important point around measure what you can measure, particularly for the pilot, that you're not trying to do too much or do nothing at all. And that is one of the things that we'll always look for. And even if you think it's insignificant or it's based on an international model, try and include how you're going to measure or what you've used to inform what you're going to measure. So has anyone got any other questions around? Yeah? Just there, are you okay to
Yeah,
speak with the mic? Yeah?
I love the way that you're bringing in the whole area of self-esteem and the physical education piece of it, particularly for the population that you're working with. But I think that could be just so applicable across our primary education curriculum. Are there any plans for that? Like you're looking at merging the PE and the SPHE piece?
Well, yeah, I think Carol said it as well. We kind of say, well, where's the roof on this? You know, I mean, I've thought then, why it could be any sport, you know, where you combine both in. It is a model that could be done. So we kind of looked at, okay, maybe we could go that way, or we could concentrate on the area that we started in.
Sure.
And that kind of grew organically there because the young people wanted to stay with us. So the kind of direction we ended up taking was we were going to concentrate on the cohort of young people we had, allow them to progress, because we thought once we do 12 weeks, we can signpost them into, you know, their local kickboxing club.
Yeah.
But what they were experiencing with us was kind of safe place. It was, you know, it wasn't focused on competition, and they wanted to stay. So, you know, we have a family of programs now, and it's, you know, after the kids do the 12 weeks, they come back and they become mentors for the next 12. So you have some kid who was like a nightmare kid who is now suddenly back in helping out their peers. You know, so that was kind of another thing that kind of sprung up on us.
Which the key to it, I think, was your route in, because often with that population, if we sit down to talk about the feelings, they won't engage with us because it's too big.
Yeah.
But the fact that you went into the kickboxing, I think, is an amazing way to support those kids, and would, I think, really work as part of a curriculum piece.
That's great.
Yeah.
You're touching on the innovation.
More thinking?
Can I just put out to the floor before we invite Aisling and Amy up? Have you got any questions for Nolan, Carl, or Joy around the application process, the interview process? What worked well? What kind of tips would they have? This is your moment to extract everything from people that have been there and done that.
All of the above.
Yeah.
For Nolan, she said that you were running the project for 10 years, and then you decided to go and apply for the funding, but you didn't know whether it was having the impact or what the impact was ultimately, and the feasibility study was what came out of your funding. How did you then have the material that's needed in the funding application, because they're so detailed, but yet your feasibility study was merely to get the information that would be needed for a funding application, if you know what I mean? So how did you
actually,
manage that?
and to just kind of turn it out into a general tip, I think the application form does take ages. But it's not because you're trying to get the words down, it's that you're trying to get the thoughts down to something really succinct about exactly what were we trying to do with this. So we'd had this number of teachers, youth facilitators, youth reach workers, all had gone through the program. We had evidence there of how good they had found the program. We had evidence of how patchy the delivery was all along the way. So it was kind of when we sat down to say, what are we actually looking for the money for? And the innovation was to see, was there something different in what we were doing to say what was being done in schools, generally as part of CSP programs or whatever was being done. So I think that, like, in some ways everyone has evidence. You wouldn't bother being in a social enterprise if you didn't have evidence. somewhere or another. But finding it and squaring it up to this fund, I mean, it really, and I'm really sorry about this one, but Animate wasn't our first sort of target for this evaluation either. But in fact, it was the better fund for us because it was a progressive evaluation that we did then rather than a static one. And I suppose it was putting together what we knew about what we were doing that allowed us to say, here's where the progress needs to be made. So that's not much use, I think, except to say that it's actually in the thinking out, why do you want the money? That's really, and the other support, that's really, I think, what takes the time and needs to be well trashed out and is worth it then.
Absolutely.
Because again, if Animate hadn't given it to us, we'd have gone to somebody else, because at that stage we were convinced we had something, you know, worth pushing through.
And Nolan, you're kind of touching on an important point around, you know, these things do take time.
Yeah.
And you need to spend the time to think it out, but it's part of it sounds like it was part of a greater plan that you had for, this isn't going to be, we're not going to stop after this, we're progressing on to achieve the initial funding that we need, which gets us to step one and so on and so on.
Exactly.
I might just take the time to invite Amy, Aisling and Anne to this stage as well, just to open it out in terms of questions from what people might have. I might just pose a question to the panel while that's happening. Yeah. Nice Nolan, would you change anything as part of that 6 months looking back on it?
Yeah.
And it could be anything. I mean, you touched on the application form itself, but the program itself that started that January to June.
Yeah, and we didn't give the program enough time within the office. You know, it was kind of added on to existing work. If we were doing it again, we would have taken that. And it's not that we didn't take it seriously, but we didn't calculate the value of it, and so we didn't prioritise it to the extent that we would this time around. I think,
Brilliant. And same question to Joanne.
What was the question again?
If you do time over again, for those 6 months between January and June, would you change anything in terms of your approach, our approach? What's an all question? I promised you this one, didn't I?
We were thinking about the accelerator program. I just, like we said, it's really good, but I'd like to just tell people, because if you were successful, you got on, I'd hate for them to look back and be like, they never told us that. So it's not called an accelerator program for nothing. It was like very intense. There was a lot of work involved, and we were chatting on the way in, and like, I think I'm just hanging out with Carol too much, but I said it was kind of like if you were getting somebody ready for a competition or for a fight, right? And they have to do a training camp. So it's a very intense training camp, and they go through it, and like they both hate it and love it at the same time. But at the end, they're in the best shape of their life, and I think that that's what our project was at the end. But it was a grueling kind of a process. So I would just say, if you are doing a foreign organisation, that you ask whoever you need to ask, that, you know, time is set aside for you to do this work, because I think we found we were doing it on top of our work. Whereas if we were to go back again and we make that clear that time is set aside, that it would have been a bit easier. So I just wanted to say that.
And just to be clear, you did say it, that it was going to take time, we just didn't take it seriously.
That's the sit-down stuff. Yeah, so Nolan and I touched on the fantastic news you had last week. Would you mind sharing that with the audience in terms of a great example of how you progressed on?
Yeah, so this was then your equality fund that we applied for funding for. It was in relation to equality for people who had been victims of sexual violence, and it is extraordinary that you can't do an online trauma program in relation to sexual violence in the way that you can in relation to a whole lot of other areas, or we believe you can't. And anyway, so partnering with an English firm that has some of the platform, the technical platform we need, we applied to the Social Innovations Fund Ireland for funding for an online e-health psychoeducation program. I'm getting good my therapist, they're really pleased that I got those three in the right order, which we hope will successfully bring us to a stage where which will suit some people just in terms of their recovery from sexual violence. And we approached Social Innovations Fund Ireland, and they gave us nearly as much as we wanted. It was an awful lot of money. It was a stack load of money. It was €60,000 and support then on top of that. But we didn't quite have enough, and so we had already started to apply to Google for money. And because, you know, like our best line with Google was, if you're looking for anything, what do? You Google it, and you could Google, but you couldn't find what we had. And we said to Google, we have the seed funding that we need from Social Innovations Fund. And then they gave us 50,000 extra on top of that. Now we had enough money to do it perfectly. And then there was this insane period of the Judges Award as well. 17 people get this 50,000. They gave $1 million to projects in Dublin. And then they were giving another 50,000, and we got another 50,000 as well. So it was just where, honest to goodness, we would have done the project on nothing if we had to, and we're used to that. That's the way we do things. We do it on nothing. And we would have done it all right on the Social Innovation Funds, but not as well as we could. Now this is going to bring it over the line. And I did say, and Google were all over the fact that they were giving out money, and I did say on Twitter as well, and we did say on Facebook, that we did know that the seed funding came from Social Innovation Fund, and the challenge to Google then was only to match it. So a bit like what you were saying there, and it was, in some ways, they were nearly pushed through your funding into it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Congratulations.
Yeah. I take all the credit for everything. But they do put it together. But it is kind of extraordinary that there's no such program available. But we believe in 18 months' time there will be such a program. And I do think it can change the world, really, in many ways. Yeah.
Thinking big. I've got a few questions from Facebook, which I'm just going to try and answer very quickly. So the first question is a very good question. Can I apply to more than one fund? So the answer to that is yes. But what I would say is we will continue to have conversations with you as you progress through, because it will obviously have an impact if you are looking to participate in 2 programs at the same time. So it's something that we say, yes, absolutely, you can apply for more than one fund, but depending on what the funds are, whether one of them is a multi-year fund, 3 to 5 years, and then you've applied for another fund that is 6 months, we'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis, but we'll pick up the conversation with you directly. And then, hopefully, all going well, if you're progressing across 2 funds through the process and you progress to the interview stage and beyond, we'll then sit down and kind of have more informative discussions in terms of, well, what's actually realistic and where are you looking, which fund would you like to go for? And it's a very kind of dynamic discussion and very open and honest. So the second question I think we've addressed, but I'm just going to call it out because it was asked. What do the non-financial supports look like? So I'm just going to speak to Carl's description, which I think was a very good example of you received across the 6-month period a strategic plan, you received media training, you list is still here. Give it to us one more time.
So, in no particular order, communications training, communication strategy, media training, organised launch of the Kick Academy, business plan, business planning, mentorship, designers, pitch training.
Brilliant, thank you. Better than I could have ever done. The last question then was another very good question. When a fund is granted, how long does SIFI remain involved and give support? So you don't have to spend the cash within the 6 months. We're not silly, we're not expecting you to spend for the sake of spending. You typically have, so if the program lasts 6 months, what we say is you can go into the next year to spend that. So what you're looking at there is we're going to stay with you for 2 years, keep in touch in terms of how you spend that cash grant. The supports itself, the program lasts for 6 months. We don't shut the door after 6 months. There are lots of examples I think that we can speak to where, look, if you have a question or you have a problem or you want to access our network, then we're there to help. And we don't want projects to just stay with us for one fund. We actually want you to identify the next fund, and I can hear saying, why don't you come to the self funds if you have, I mean, I suppose the whole part of the process that we would always encourage is have a look to identify where you potentially can fit for any given funds that are with us. There's also an opportunity for you, if you meet the bar, and it's a high bar, in terms of our growth fund. So the growth fund stipulates that you have to partake in one of our programs. You have to be a recipient of funds as part of eligibility criteria to access the growth fund. So look, there are more and more opportunities presenting themselves. We always say to people, explore everything, ask questions. We're always there to talk. The door doesn't shut after 6 months. I don't know if anyone's had,
So the Ignite Fund is a one-year program, and the Accelerator will last 6 months, but it's designed for, it's designed for a year. What's special about the Manon Inherent Fund, sponsored by Bank of America, you can see on the fundraising. Bank of America have been really fantastic about this, and they have set up this fund to run for 3 years. So projects will come in on day one, but stay with us for 3 years, and the money will repeat every year. So that's, I have to say, hats off. That is very innovative in the Irish context, and I think a fantastic opportunity. New funds, you can stay with us for 5 years and then come back for the growth funds. So in that order, Ignite is fantastic. And I think that Nolene, it shows that once you figure out how to tweak that application process and get to know what, I suppose, what we're about, and then Nolene came through one fund but came back to us for a second fund, and I'm sure Nolene, you'll find something and find it. So yeah, it's once you're with us, we get to know you and we want to work with you and stay with you.
Brilliant, thanks so much. I should say as well, just we've got about 5 or 6 minutes. Obviously, everyone's going to stay behind, and any questions that you just want to ask in person, that's absolutely fine. There's lots of great resources on the website. For any given fund that you're looking to apply for, please scroll down to the frequently asked questions. We understand, we might think that the application forms make perfect sense, but everyone thinks that. So we try and make it as easy as possible. There are ways to sample answer questions. There's, I think, John Evoy, one of our colleagues, has done a sample video, which is part of the process as well. So those resources are there. Please look them up if you are thinking of applying. So we've about 5 minutes left. Who's got the next question? Yes.
I was just wondering about the match funding. Are there any restrictions as to who could be your donors? For example, if you were a membership organisation, could your members commit to giving you 20 grand for 2 years?
No, but I suppose the answer to that is in why CIFI was catalysed in the first place, and CIFI was catalysed to replace or to try and help fill the gap that was left by Atlantic Philanthropy and One Foundation. So our remit is to encourage philanthropy. So the match funding is to encourage philanthropy. So it can be state money or future money, so memberships that are coming in. So your application needs to be accompanied by a letter from a donor to say, I am Dermody, or I, Bank of America, I'm willing to support, or I'm interested in supporting this project, and their application to the fund. So, and it can't be state money. We've got a grant from Department of Social Protection, or we've got a grant from local authority. So it's private philanthropy. But if you need to sense check or something, if you're not sure about something, just give us an email. Hello, it's socialinnovation.ie.
Brilliant. Next question. Yep.
So you were talking about having a pipeline of participants for either the Ignite or the non-health. We will obviously have identified where that pipeline will be, but we haven't specifically got the partners in place. Is that necessary for the application?
Yeah, so that's for the non-inherent, so that's an advantageous criteria. So it's advantageous, it's not necessary, but if you have built the partnership, I would emphasise that in the application, and so that we know that.
Okay, but they don't need to have to
They don't need to have to be in a position where you have them lined up and have their names and everything, but you just, if you can give us an indication that you have sources of where they're going to come from, that would be great.
Thanks.
In terms of the participation in the Accelerator program, I know that there's sort of a project lead who would do the pitch video. Would it be that person only who would participate in different aspects of the Accelerator program and trainings, or because obviously we have people across the organization who work with that person on that project, and just in terms of planning your time and your workload, into incorporating that into it. I just wanted to know
great
if
question.
a few people from our staff could participate in it. Great.
So I'll start, and then if someone wants to jump in, that's fine. But at a core, we ask for one participant, but we're not limited in terms of like you bringing extra people. If we're doing a communications workshop and you have a comms department that would benefit more from it, we would encourage you to bring them with you, absolutely. But we would require that the person who is, signed up to do the program is our main contact and is there throughout. That makes sense. So more not a problem. Less would be the that makes sense.
Thanks, Ashley. I think we have time for one more question. Who wants to ask the last question? Yeah. Oh.
I'm just wondering, for the project, this is with the Children and Youth Mental Health Fund, the project must provide evidence that is up and running or has been tested at least in a minimal way. If you have it up and running, say, for an adult population and you're looking to expand the service to a children population, does that count? Is that allowed?
So, sorry, I work on these funds as well. So, yes, that is allowed, that is fine. And the more evidence that you have, the better. So if you have, that proven in terms of adults, that's brilliant. But if you have some research or some relationships with younger people that you've worked with to kind of give it weight and give it evidence, and you know that, moving it into that group would be an easy transition, that's fine. But you need to give us that kind of evidence.
I think that's a great way to kind of just finish the overall session. If you're unsure about something, just ask us. And back to Nolan's point, use the application process to really think through your project. Use the questions to kind of challenge yourself in terms of, well, are we doing that? And if I were putting that down on paper, how would I articulate that? Or if I'm not sure in something, just ask. I think everyone has made their email addresses available, so there's no getting away from now. You can obviously ask questions in person now as well. But really, I would just encourage everyone. We fully appreciate that we might think that all of these application forms make perfect sense, and how can you not understand this and understand that? Look, we get it. You're probably filling these out every week, every month. So just ask the questions if you're unsure about anything. Ultimately, our goal is to support you to put your best possible foot forward in terms of those applications. There are a number of closing dates, which I hope everyone took note of. I'd just like to thank Noli Blackwell, Joy, Carl, and Aisling, and Amy. Also, we have Anna and Dara as well. That obviously this doesn't work without them, so my apologies. And anyone else have this for the family that I can't see at this moment in time. We're obviously going to stick around if anyone has any further questions, but it isn't best to look at your applications, and if you're not sure about it, just ask.